You have fallen into Event Horizon with John Michael Godier. In today's episode, John is joined by Alberto Caballero. Alberto has an MA in Intelligence Analysis and Counterterrorism. He is the host of the Exoplanets channel, a YouTube channel about habitable exoplanets, extraterrestrial intelligence, and interstellar travel. He is also known for coordinating the Habitable Exoplanet Hunting Project, an international network of more than 30 observatories looking for nearby potentially habitable exoplanets. The team recently reported GJ3470c, the first exoplanet candidate fully discovered by amateur astronomers. In his last paper, Caballero proposes a new type of crewed interstellar spacecraft called Solar 1, which could theoretically reach 30% the speed of light.
Alberto Caballero, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for the opportunity of being here.
Now, Alberto, you run the Exoplanets channel on YouTube, a good channel that I watch myself. And lately you authored a paper and talked about it a little bit on your channel, a proposal for the first crewed interstellar spacecraft. In other words, sending humans on an interstellar voyage. Solar 1, give us an overview.
Yes, exactly. Well, basically, Solar 1 is a proposal that I have made about a new concept of interstellar spacecraft that would basically use several propulsion methods that have already been proposed. Those methods are basically three: nuclear fusion, beam-powered propulsion, and also electromagnetic propulsion. Those three would be the main methods of propulsion used in Solar 1. And basically, Solar 1, I have announced Solar 1 as a new type of spacecraft, but it's actually nothing new. I mean, the concepts, the methods used that would be used by Solar 1 are already known by most of the community because many people have already written about them. So it's a little bit, the Solar 1 is a little bit, the idea basically came from the Breakthrough Starshot project. Breakthrough Initiatives is now working on the Starshot project, where they propose to send tiny spacecrafts propelled by light, actually by lasers. And Solar 1 would be something like a huge version of this, and of course with people inside.
Now, what's the time frame? Now, this is basically a solar sail driven by laser. And how long is it going to take to get people to, say, Proxima Centauri?
Yes, well, the maximum speed, let's say, of this spacecraft, in my calculations, it would be something like 30% the speed of light. But actually, the average speed is only 22% the speed of light. So in a trip to, for example, the closest star, the time frame we were talking about something close to 20 years. It could be something... It could be less than 19 years, but we're talking about huge time frames, about a very long trip.
Now, one of the things mentioned in the paper is the idea of putting people in stasis for the voyage. Are we anywhere close to being able to do that?
Do you mean, for example, cryosleep? Or
Yes, cryosleep.
Exactly. Well, I believe we are actually a little bit far from that point. I think NASA right now has worked on that area in some of their projects. They have worked on this more focused to Mars, how to get people to Mars with some sort of hibernation. And there are some proposals made by NASA going on right now. I haven't seen anything actually about cryosleep for interstellar travel because the level of engineering involved would be much more higher. But of course, I think right now we are in a very early stage on research about hibernation and cryosleep. And yeah, I think much more research needs to be done in order to actually be able to hibernate during several years for such a long trip. That would be to actually Proxima Centauri or Alpha Centauri, which in my opinion, it's more interesting, Alpha Centauri A or B.
Now, why would that be? those particular stars. I know that one of them is sun-like, and that's interesting.
Yeah.
And I guess there are suspected planets maybe in the main system, but we do know about Proxima B at least.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. I mean, Solar One would be only. It has been written as an idea of being done only if once we discover actually a planet that has life on Earth. But only, I think that this mission would only make sense. It would only make sense to send people to such a planet once we are almost sure that that planet is potentially habitable for us. I think it would be a suicide mission to send someone to a planet which we don't know yet if it's habitable for us. So first of all, of course, we would need to find a potentially habitable exoplanet around Alpha Centauri A or B, and then we would have to be pretty sure about its habitability to reduce any possible efforts or problems in the mission. And as you said, of course, I believe that Proxima B is an excellent candidate. It's an excellent target, but the problem for Proxima Centauri, I would say, is that it's a flare star. So from time to time, you have huge releases of radiation. And I don't really see Proxima B as a planet with a very high level of habitability, despite it's the closest one. So I think Alpha Centauri, especially Alpha Centauri A, I think Alpha Centauri A is a much more candidate as a star, as a host star, to actually host habitability. Alpha Centauri B emits quite a huge level of X radiation, and actually there are papers saying that it's possible that a planet could exist around Alpha Centauri A, that there would be no problem due to the fact that it's a binary star, that there would be a space between dust disk around these stars and the habitable zone of the star. So it would be impossible. It would be, in theory, it would be possible for a planet to be habitable in that area. So that's why, for being Proxima Centauri a flare star, that's why I think that it could be a hard planet for us.
Now, what about the B component in the Proxima Centauri system itself, which I recall is a Type K orange dwarf, I think? I might be wrong about that, but don't quote me on that. But I think it's a sun-like star, and then a Type K, and then, as you noted, Proxima Centauri's out there as a red dwarf and flare star, really bad one. But what about the B component of that system? Because it has been advanced that maybe Type K stars are actually better than the sun as far as habitability goes. I don't know if that's been very fleshed out, but it has been suggested.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I agree. It has been suggested that K-type stars are better than G-type stars because they actually emit less. They emit more radiation in general, but I believe that they last longer. So in terms of for a civilization to appear in this kind of star systems, they will have much longer time frames. So before the star actually ends the main phase and goes to an extinction. So it would have, and this is even better for red dwarfs. They last way longer, and the possibility of any type of life arising in these planets could increase. But at the same time, you have drawbacks. You have some challenges. The smaller the star, the more radiation. The red dwarf stars have much more radiation than G-type stars. So K-type stars, on the one hand, I believe that they would be better because they would last longer, and their existence would be much longer. But on the other hand, some of them emit more radiation, which is the case, for example, of Alpha Centauri B, which emits 5 times the radiation of the sun. So I think for us we would need a much more technology to have that shielding against those levels of radiation. That's why I think Alpha Centauri A would be better.
Say we scout these systems either remotely through instrumentation here on Earth, or we break through Starshot, we go and do a flyby of these systems, and we see a planet with biosignatures, which would then warrant a crewed mission, presumably as you've advanced.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get there, how do you slow down?
Yes. Well, basically, that's probably the most maybe different aspect of my proposal compared to other proposals. What I propose, well, some people have proposed to use secondary light sails. For example, Robert Forward proposed to use a secondary light sail to actually reduce that speed. What I propose is something a little bit different. I include in my concept of Solar One, I include a scoop, a buzzard scoop. And this actually, it has been written in some papers that a buzzard scoop produces an important drag when it's been used. So basically, Solar One would actually decelerate with the buzzard scoop. The electromagnetic fields would produce a huge drag that would actually help. That would be the main thing, the main aspect, the main source, helping to reduce the speed of the spacecraft. And there would be the spacecraft would have a buzzard scoop at the front that would only have to be activated during the deceleration. It would not have to be used during acceleration. During acceleration, only beam powered propulsion. And as you said exactly in the paper, I talk about laser propulsion, but I also talk a little bit about how to use the sun to actually propel the light sail. I think that using large mirrors could be much more efficient rather than building a huge laser.
Now, if you're using the sun with large mirrors, and assuming that they would be more efficient than a flat mirror, I guess you would want like a parabolic mirror, like a telescope, right, to collect more sunlight to create more pressure. Now, could you use lensing and all that to sort of concentrate the sun's output into the sail itself?
Yes, I think it could be possible. I mean, I believe there could be many possibilities. Of course, I mean, it would be still a huge engineering challenge because calculated that you would have to actually build a mirror. For example, in the case of mirrors, a 6-kilometer mirror. Then you would have probably to build a mirror here on Earth, and then send the different parts to the orbit, and then assemble the whole thing in orbit, and then send it to closer to the sun to actually achieve a higher power output. So that would be a huge challenge. And I have been recently talking with Adam Kroll about the possibility of using either parabolic mirrors or actually Fresnel lenses, for example. And I think we have both agreed on the possibility that parabolic mirrors would actually be much more efficient because maybe Fresnel lenses produce they focus the light very well if the point source is small, but for the case of the sun, the point source would be much larger than the Fresnel lens, and that may not be the best to actually focus all the light in the sail. So for this actually specific application, it might be better to actually use parabolic mirrors. It would be just a 6-kilometer parabolic mirror very close to the sun, and then you also need, of course, a secondary mirror that would be used to actually focus the light in the light cell. And that secondary mirror, that's I think it's another engineering challenge, because the secondary mirror, in my opinion, has to be flexible. You have to be all the time changing the orientation of the mirror to actually keep the beam in the light cell, because the spacecraft is going away from the point of light. So you have the square inverse law. You have the square inverse law, and the farther away the spacecraft is, the less light it receives. So you have to actually manage to get that short out. You need a secondary mirror. At least that's the way I have proposed it. And a secondary mirror that actually it's all the time being actually changing the orientation of its mirrors to actually keep the beam all the time in the light cell.
Now, one thing strikes me here. I'm thinking this through as you describe it.
Yeah.
This is a technosignature, because leakage from that light sail, starlight where there shouldn't be starlight, that would be a detectable technosignature, wouldn't you think?
Exactly. Yes. Actually, well, there is a paper. I don't remember I contacted him a few years ago. He wrote a paper about like 100 stars blinking at the same time, and he said that actually it was a possible biosignature that because all the stars, those 100 and something stars, were blinking at the same time, and at the same time, Seth Hostak from Ceti Institute told me that was actually probably caused by error. I don't know but of course that could be a possibility. It would just a laser or increasing and focusing the light from the sun would actually outshine the sun 1,000, 10,000 times, it would be massive. I mean, it could be possible to detect that increase in brightness from another star system. So, of course, that could be a possibility. And right now, there is a project currently being done by the Ceti Institute. It is called Laser Ceti, and they are actually trying to build, well, they have already built several detectors to detect laser pulses coming from, possible laser pulses coming from other star systems.
Now, with the other method, laser propulsion,
Yeah.
from either, space nearby or Lagrange point or something like that, and we're shooting a laser at the sail, propelling it, which, as you just noted, is also a technosignature.
Yeah.
What power are we talking about with a laser? What power levels are going to be needed to propel the spacecraft to 20% the speed of light?
Well, the amount of power required is, I would say, it's insane. It's very, very huge. I actually made my calculations with the number proposed by Robert Forward. Robert Forward was actually the first person proposing to actually create a spacecraft with a huge light sail propelled by lasers and then put humans inside. I think he was the first one. And he proposes to use 26 terawatts of power, which is extremely huge. So I made all the calculations with this amount of energy. And of course, 26 terawatts of power, it could be, I mean, we would need, like, I don't remember, 100, something like that, D-star arrays. D-star is right now it's a proposed laser that could be used for the destruction of asteroids, and it has also been proposed for interstellar propulsion. So you would need like an array of 100 D-star lasers to actually get those 26 terawatts of power. So that's why I believe that using the sun might be an engineering challenge, but maybe more feasible to actually build it within this century.
Now, you also mention compact fusion and using that as an energy source for various aspects of this. And I think that's something that a lot of people aren't aware of, that compact fusion is seems to, at least to me, to be a lot closer than people realize. Certainly closer than other attempts at fusion. So compact fusion, which is now being developed by the U.S. Navy, was being developed by Lockheed Martin, I guess still is. How does that play into this?
Yeah, that would play indeed a key role here because, of course, I mean, in nuclear fusion, it's possible to use it just to accelerate a spacecraft, but the amount of fuel needed, it's huge. And even if one uses a buzzer scoop for the acceleration, you're going to get a huge amount of drag. So the amount of fuel needed for Solar One, it would still be huge. We're talking about 5,000 tons or something like that. So that's why I propose to use the buzzer scoop inside. So basically, the idea of using a compact fusion reactor in the spacecraft would be just a matter of size. We need something that actually propels we would need something that propels the laser, and that laser is fundamental to actually reduce the size of the scoop. So it would be like a cycle. Every component of the spacecraft would need each other, because if you need to decelerate the spacecraft, you need a buzzer scoop. And if you need a small buzzer scoop with less weight, you need actually a laser to ionize hydrogen and to actually be able to collect a higher amount of protons. So you need a laser in the front of the cockpit. That has not been proposed by me. That has been proposed by another author. So yeah, you would need actually a laser to reduce the size of the scoop. And for the laser, you can actually power with antimatter, of course, but the amount of antimatter needed would be a lot, and it would be possible to collect from the space, but you would actually need a petawatt laser to break a space to actually be able to collect antimatter directly from space. And a petawatt laser would actually need much more energy, much more. It would weight way more. It would weigh a lot more. So you would need actually better to use. I believe that nuclear fusion could be the best way to power a laser on board rather than antimatter, due to the fact that we could collect the fuel, those protons, directly from space with the buzzer scoop. And you need the laser, and you need to power the laser, you need a compact nuclear fusion reactor, and of course you need the energy to make the power the nuclear fusion reactor work. That's a thing I haven't worked a lot of, because you would not need a lot of energy for that, and maybe you could actually use some of the light, produce some of the energy coming from the light from the light produced by the laser or the sun. So that's not my main concern, because the output of the nuclear fusion reactor will be much higher than the input. But it's as you said. Of course, there are many people working right now. Salvatore Pais, who is the person actually who patented this thing, believes that it could be possible to make a really small terawatt nuclear compact fusion reactor. But how much would it weigh? I believe that we still don't know. Some people, some companies like Lockheed Martin have been talking about 200 tons, but for really small power outputs. For 1 terawatt, we really don't know. I believe we need a breakthrough to actually get that amount of power in a compact nuclear fusion reactor for a very small size. Weight rather than size.
It's actually an amazing idea, because if we could do that and we had that fusion reactor, which we seem to be, as you mentioned, Salvatore Pais is working on patenting things like this. If we have that, that is going to change the world. Yeah. You know, that is going to change the world in ways that can't even be imagined, because all of a sudden the energy problems of this planet are finished. We no longer have energy problems. So when do you think a time frame is to where we could actually realize this idea?
Well, I think, some people have said, I think, of course, we need to achieve nuclear fusion first, effective nuclear fusion. I think we have had really good news recently from France. They are building this huge reactor called ITER, and I think we are going in the right direction. There is this sentence, this paragraph, it's believed that we are always 10 years away from nuclear fusion, and I think it's right. But I think the construction of the new building in France is a turn point. I think we are actually starting to make things physically. And some people have suggested, that maybe we could have the first spacecraft powered by nuclear fusion by 2035, so only in 15 years. And some people have said that maybe we could actually have nuclear fusion reactors by 2050. Gerald Jackson, I believe he has actually said that 2050 could be a good the real moment. And of course, you need, compact fusion is much more difficult, because you have to make everything much more smaller. But I don't think it's really that far, because if we actually take a look to the separation in terms of years between the first fission reactor that humans built and the first compact fission reactor that we built, I don't think there is a huge different in years. We're talking about fission, but I believe it's the same. Huge fission nuclear plant, and then we are able to build right now small nuclear fission reactors, and that's a reality. So it didn't take for humanity. It didn't take too much, in my opinion, to achieve that. So I believe it could be the same for fusion. Once we achieve effective nuclear fusion for large plants, I think the research on compact fusion reactors will be accelerated, and we can. I believe. I'm optimistic, maybe, but I think it could be possible to be achieved this century. Compact fusion reactors this century.
Could even be sooner than that. As I remember when this first came out from Lockheed Martin, they were looking at a 5 or 10 year timetable on developing a compact fusion reactor. That apparently did not pan out.
Yeah.
But when you have funding like the U.S. Navy looking into it, things tend to happen. And really, the idea of compact fusion isn't really far-fetched. Just magnetically confining the plasma like they're trying to do seems to me to be a viable technology eventually. You just have to work it out.
Yeah.
So I think we're past that period where fusion is always a decade away. I think it's actually, we're getting towards the end, and that fusion will be the future.
Yeah.
And it'll either come, like you said, from compact fusion, or it'll come from ITER. And in ITER's case, obviously that's huge fusion power plant stuff. Can't really launch that. But from that, you can develop much smaller models if you don't nail compact fusion at first.
Yeah.
So I think that'll revolutionize it. And I mean, one can easily think about running gigantic Battlestar Galactica space stations on one single, fusion reactor the size of a bus,
Yeah.
And maybe this century, Actually, I would bet it's this century.
Yeah.
We still have a lot of time. Are there any other candidates you're thinking about other than the Alpha Centauri system where we might be able to use this technology to get to?
Good question, of course. I think there are some interesting candidates, but the problem is that they might be really far away. So, of course, for example, I believe that Tau Ceti, for example, which is 12 light years away, it is a good candidate. There is a potentially habitable exoplanet around this star. We are not sure about its temperature because it may be a Venus type exoplanet. If the atmosphere is too thick, it might be too hot for life. But if it's not really thick, it could be a possibility. Well, the problem with Tau Ceti is that the amount of asteroids hitting any planet has been calculated to be around 10 times higher than here in our solar system. So maybe it might be difficult to live there. Then we have Barnard star. We have some stars, but the problem is that, in my opinion, is that some of these stars, these close stars, they are flare stars. And the problem with flare stars is that, life for us as we know it might be difficult. But for the rest, I think that it will be really important to actually find a potentially habitable exoplanet around Alpha Centauri A. I think that would be, I think many people is working on coronagraphs building coronagraphs to actually be able, because I believe that that's the main problem with finding exoplanets around these huge stars, is that the light actually it's a huge amount of light actually hitting the detector of your camera. So you need to block that light to actually be able to, for example, directly image the exoplanet. So I think once we get some important coronagraphs out there in orbit, we will probably be able to actually image and find some exoplanet. And I believe it is highly likely that there is at least one exoplanet either orbiting Alpha Centauri A or B.
There seems to be hints of it. I remember it's been suggested. I don't know if they can get any radial velocity data or anything off of it, but there seems to be a suspicion that it is, which is interesting because it's a double star system, which usually all that great for planets.
Yeah.
Now you run the Exoplanets channel on YouTube.
Yeah.
And you've done that for a while, haven't you? I mean, you've been around for probably longer than I have.
Well, yeah, 3 years or so, yeah.
Now,
yeah.
We're entering a golden age of exoplanet exploration. As you said, we can now start to contemplate actually imaging them and characterizing them. And with James Webb, nearing launch, that'll give us another tool that can allow us to look for biosignatures and planetary atmospheres. Where do you think we should look first? Instead of the flare stars, let's put it this way, stars, the red dwarfs, do we have any sun-like stars or type Ks or anything like that nearby that we could look for biosignatures within exoplanets?
Yes, I believe some stars are really interesting. Apart from Alpha Centauri A, we have, for example, Epsilon Eridani. I would say that Epsilon Eridani is the closest K-type star after Alpha Centauri B. I'm reading here because I have the information. I'm really bad at actually remembering these numbers. Epsilon Eridani is 10 light years away. So yeah, I think Epsilon Eridani could be a good target. And yeah, we have Tau Ceti. I think Tau Ceti would be actually a pretty interesting star. Epsilon Indi, for example. I think we have several stars that could be a good candidates to start with. Of course, I believe that the traapist system will be probably the first one in to actually be. I mean, the people actually working with James Webb probably will actually look at TRAPPIST-1 among the first. But I think that TRAPPIST-1 is not really that interesting, contrary to the popular belief, because TRAPPIST-1, well, first of all, it's really far. So, 40 light years away. Everything is far, of course, even 4 light years away right now for us. But 40 light years away, it's like crazy far. And secondly, it is a flare star, TRAPPIST-1. So, yeah, of course, these planets, there are studies saying that the planets could be rocky. They could have water. a huge amount of water. So actually, TRAPPIST 1D is probably the one with the highest Earth similarity index, according to Puerto Rico. But yeah, I mean, it is a fair start. So I would start with actually the closest G and K-type star without flares, because that's the thing. Some K-type stars actually have flares. Not only the red dwarfs, it's rare, but some K-type star actually have flares. So the main targets, in my opinion, would be the closest G and K-type stars without flares. Yes.
Now that's interesting because, I mean, when we look at the sun's a little bit weird in how calm it actually is. You know, it doesn't, even for a Type G star, it doesn't flare very much. Although obviously it does. I mean, we could get hit by a coronal mass ejection at any time, but it's a very quiescent star. And other Type Gs are a little bit more active. And who's to say, you know, what changes across the star's lifetime? So we have to look at the ages of these stars to try to figure out exactly how calm they are. But with TRAPPIST, that system, with the TRAPPIST system, you've got multiple planets, right? And a lot of them are tidally locked. So now tidal locking, what does that do for the possibilities of habitability? Because can you have zones like eyeball worlds? You know, I mean, would that be viable in that system? Or can you have some sort of life that just lives on the dark side, that is able to, I don't know, harvest some sort of energy from the warm side of the planet and evolve and grow on the other side? Do you think that sort of highly hypothetical life might be viable to look for as a biosignature in TRAPPIST?
Yes, I believe so. I think the possibility of existing life in any of the TRAPPIST-1 planets, it's possible, because maybe for us, I mean, I think that I tend to separate between looking for planets for us, for colonization, those planets which would be better for us to live there, and the other planets which are likely to have life, which in some cases they overlap and could be the same. But in other cases, maybe I believe that there could be, for example, lots of life in TRAPPIST-1, but maybe the type of life existing there would not actually survive in our solar system. So yeah, I believe that it is highly likely that there is life there, especially because there are several studies indicating a high probability of existing water there. But I believe that maybe humans would not be able to adapt there. And on the other side, maybe they would not be able, any type of life, whatever they find, whatever there are, if there is something, the life there might not be able to adapt here, because it's a huge difference of a star, a G-type star from a red dwarf star. And of course, those planets, you have the right temperature, you don't have much radiation. The only problem with the flares, but the flares happen only occasionally, and the flare might not actually go in the direction of the planet, or not all the planets. So it's actually a random event, I believe. So yeah, I think it would be really interesting to look for biosignatures in all the planets, especially in TRAPPIST-1D, which it is believed to be the one with the highest Earth similarity index, of course.
Now, with human colonization of, you know, the far future colonization of exoplanets, the flare stars, that just becomes a matter of shielding, right? In other words, you could build simply a star shade to block any sort of flare if you were going to go ahead and terraform and colonize a world, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think it could be a possibility, or actually just building cities maybe underground that would be away from any radiation. I think it could be actually has been actually suggested that actually on Mars, it is more likely that there is life underground than outside because of the radiation. The more underground, the less radiation actually getting inside the soil. So maybe building some some kind of a structure underground in Proxima B could be a possibility to actually remove that danger of possible flares. But in any case, the flare events in Proxima B, I think they are rare. I think the last one was in 1998. I'm not sure. I think that it's not. I believe it's not. That happens every day. So we have the same. I mean, we also have the danger of receiving an asteroid, a huge asteroid, totally destroying Earth. I think we were very lucky with Oumuamua coming from the interstellar. From Interstellar Space Travel, but it maybe could have come another asteroid much bigger. And right now, NASA, of course, several people are working on lasers to try to destroy these dangerous asteroids. And I think they are working really hard because I believe it is highly unlikely that any of the asteroids within the solar system could actually hit us. But what if some interstellar asteroid comes to our solar system again? So we had Oumuamua, which was the first one detected at least, but maybe the next one that comes, it's much bigger. Thankfully, we had Jupiter that actually removes most of the threats to our planet, but it might not be the case the next time, depending on maybe the location of the planets and the where the new asteroid comes from. So I believe it is a threat, especially for asteroids coming from outside the solar system. Yeah.
That actually reminds me of something I've been thinking about for a video on my channel recently.
Yeah.
Is that if we see objects like Borisov and Oumuamua regularly, say once we get the Vera Rubin Observatory going and we're basically taking a sky survey every day and a half, we're going to see these things and probably a large population of them.
Yep.
Which means there are probably meteorites sitting on this planet that are of interstellar origin, and that maybe we should be looking a little bit closer at our meteorite collections to see which ones might be from somewhere else, which I think you should be able to tell. Isotopes and things like that, you should be able to tell. So anyway, that's sort of an area that I'm thinking might end up being a sort of budding new area of meteoritics, is trying to figure out which one of these are interstellar in origin and why. What is the difference, if any, between these and these? We really have a real mystery here. Is that okay? We look at Borisov. That's a comet, and it looks like a solar system comet, behaves like it, nothing special, except it's on a trajectory that's, says that it's interstellar. Then we have Oumuamua, and we have no idea what exactly that was.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It really is, and there was actually a paper came out that seems to refute a recent theory that it was a hydrogen iceberg and all this, and we just seem to keep going back into territory of we don't know exactly what that was, and then you wonder if there's a population of these weird objects that are passing through the solar system at all times.
Yeah.
We are almost out of time, but I want to ask you a question. What's your take on the Fermi paradox? Do you think we're alone? Do you think might as well be alone? Or what's your view?
Yes, good question. Well, really complicated at the same time, of course. Of course. I think that the chances of existing life out there are actually high. I believe, in my opinion, it's not a matter of, not for the question. I mean, in general, I think it's not a matter of I believe or I don't believe, I think it's just a matter, in my opinion, of mathematical probability. I think there is a recent study, this year, recent study suggesting that there could be 36 civilizations, communicative civilizations within our galaxy. The paper was actually published this year, a few months ago. So Claudio Maccone has made some calculations saying that it is likely that the closest communicative civilization, so by communicative I mean advanced at least to the level that we have, could be actually 2,000 light years away, which is of course very far. But the Milky Way is 100,000 light years, so 2,000 would be really close, no? And Claudio Maccone said that it could be some chance of existing a communicative intelligent civilization within 500 light years, at least. The closest one, 500 light years away. A low chance of that, but still it could be possible. So maybe we could have mathematics have proved that in theory it could be possible, or let's say highly likely, that there could be communicative civilizations within, or at least 500 light years away. And then you have a primitive, I believe that the number of primitive civilizations could be actually probably much higher than the number of advanced civilizations. So even if there is unlikely that there is an advanced civilization or communicative civilization within 500 light years, as Claudio Maccone has suggested with his equations, I believe that there could be plenty of primitive civilizations in any planet, actually, maybe in Proxima b or Barnard b or any nearby planet, and that they are not producing any. They're maybe like us, 100 light years away, when we did not produce any radio signal to space, and they're like, well, they might be actually humanoids or humans, but they are not producing any signal. So we are not really seeing them. It's impossible for us to actually detect them if they don't produce any signature or radio signal. So I think chances. I think it's just a matter of mathematics. I think we're talking about a high probability, but of course, I would say that, in my opinion, I don't believe, or I believe. I just think that it is highly probable. There is a high probability of that occurring. But yeah, I would say my answer is probably I don't know. Yeah.
All right, Alberto, we are out of time. Everybody should check out the Exoplanets channel. There's lots of good videos on this subject matter over there, and be sure to subscribe. Alberto, thanks for appearing with us today, and I hope you'll come back sometime.
Thank you very much for the opportunity of being here. And yeah, my paper is right now being under review. But if more people is interested, it will appear in the magazine of the British Interplanetary Society I believe in November. They told me in November. So if some people is interested in this, they can read more about that in this magazine. And yes, thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.
John, everyone says you sound like a robot. Unfortunately, this isn't quite true, as your ability to follow programmed instructions demonstrates.
What? Of course I'm not a robot.
Well, I've created a compromise. Introducing JohnBot.
Hello, I am JohnBot. Anna is great. John is not. The possum is okay. What? JohnBot? And be sure to buy my books. And check out my books. And be sure to buy my books.
Oh no, it's happening again. He's just like you.
What? What the? He's drinking my coffee. What?
Oh dear, he's not even weather sealed yet. Never mind. I suppose we could break him for parts.
And be sure to check out my books in this amazing studio in which we live.